Recording in progress.
All right, so the recording has started. Councilman Martinez is joining via Zoom.
Ready? Sorry. I'm trying to keep over your schedule. Not at all. I am going to call today's December 13th, happy Friday the 13th, Truckee River Flood Management Authority meeting to order with a roll call. Marty, if you can help out.
Okay. Donald Abbott,
Here.
Clara Andriola,
Present.
Ed Lawson,
Here.
Alexis Hill,
Here.
Naomi Dewar, Miguel Martinez.
Here.
You have the roll call and quorum.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Looking for Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry. A little bit. Mr. Lawson, will you lead us?
Yes, please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Glad I could make your morning.
There's no comma.
There is no comma.
Perfect. We'll go to item B, 1B, public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Yeah.
Perfect. And we'll hop over to item 1C, approval of the agenda for December 13th, 2024. Looking for a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Ms. Andriola.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lawson. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item D, 1D, announcements and clippings. Mr. Robeson.
Yeah, I just have a couple of quick announcements. One is that perhaps today in the U.S. Senate, they will be voting on the WRDA bill, and we are in there to be deauthorized. It was already passed by the House, I believe 399 to 17 or something of that nature. It's expected to pass. It's expected to be brought up this week, and the president is expected to sign it maybe this weekend. So just to let you know, we are about to be deauthorized from the Army Corps project. Second thing is our Wadsworth project is on track to go out to bid next month. So we're staying on track with that and working through things with our consultant.
Awesome. Thank you, sir, and thanks for joining us, Ms. Hill.
Thank you.
Saw you on Zoom. So any questions for Mr. Robeson?
Great job.
I'll second that one. We'll move on to item 2, consent items. Looking for a motion of 2A, 2B, 2C, unless someone wants to pull one.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Andriola. Looking for a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hill. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 3, consideration and acceptance of a $1,175,000 FEMA grant for the planning and design of the Rock to McCarran stretch of the Truckee River Flood Control Project. Possible action to authorize the executive director to accept the grant and to sign all required documents. Mr. Robeson.
Yeah, just very quickly, we applied for this grant back in April, and I just want to say one thing, that our staff, by building up our database and our language and all the things that we're doing for grant writing, that originally was going to be a grant for property, but they lowered the value, and I said, that's not really worth it for the property. Is there something else we can do? And on a Friday, she said, well, you could do it, for something else. And I go, how about a design at Rock McCarran? And she said, yeah, that would be eligible. So over the weekend, with all the information that we already had built up for the other grants and everything, I was able to do it over a weekend and get that done on a Monday deadline. And so that's how we got that grant. So I think that as we're changing to a grant, a grant-looking organization with deauthorization, we're going to become more and more like that. And all our staff is really pitching in to make sure that each person is chipping in where they need to chip in. So that was a real success story, and I just urge you to accept it. It will defray about a third of the cost of the Rock McCarran design to 60%.
Thank you, Mr. Robeson. I will definitely say thank you for working over the weekend, going up and above to, well worth this dollar sign. So just thank you. And Mr. Lawson?
$1.2 million is nothing to sneeze at, so thank you.
Did I say
don't know.
billion? I said million.
Billion.
1.2 million.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how many hours you worked, but per hour, that's a pretty good wage.
You can have 48 hours.
Remember,
Around
the
50,000 an hour.
staff did a lot of work to set me up for this so that I could get it done in a weekend. So that's the key.
Good job to everyone that helped out.
Yeah.
Thanks to all.
Any other questions or comments on item 3? I know it's possible action, so do we have any public comment? I don't see any. Perfect. Then I'm looking for a
I'll
motion.
move to approve.
Mr.
Oh,
Chair,
yeah,
Chair, can I make a request on that motion?
of course.
That it also authorize the executive director to sign all necessary documents?
I move to approve with the noted recommendation by council.
We have a motion looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Hill. Any other questions, comments? Don't hear or see any. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks, Mr. Robeson. Item 4, presentation and discussion of a draft strategic plan for the design and construction of the Turfma Meadows Flood Control Project, including discussion of the timeline and cash flow for the construction of the project. Possible action to make changes to the draft strategic plan or to give direction to staff. Mr. Robeson again.
All right, thank you. Can we get the PowerPoint up? All right, great, thanks. So what I want to talk about here is, in the past, how we've been informing you about the overall strategic plan for the Meadows Flood Project is kind of a hodgepodge of staff reports. So you have to, if you want to explain it or try to tell somebody what we're really doing, is you have to go back and go through all these staff reports. So in going through these staff reports, it's kind of chaotic and they're not integrated. So this was a first attempt to put together a strategic plan. And as you put it together, you see like, oh, wow, there's a hole there. There's things I need to add in there and things like that. But with deauthorization this week, with the tribal letter of non-opposition signed, and also with the new modeling, the PMR modeling, which is way higher quality to show the actual impacts of the project and how the project should be designed. With those 3 things in mind, we're in a new world here, and it's really going to get tighter and tighter where, I don't just say, oh, this year we'll do this year we'll do this. I'll say, by this meeting, I'm going to want your authorization for that. So it's going to tighten up, and I felt like because of that, we should have a strategic plan that anytime anybody wants to know what's going on, they can come to it, and it can be updated all the time. So that's the reason for the strategic plan, and you can see here, what is a strategic plan? It's just a blueprint on the timing, components, and funding. It's not everything. It's not like the general evaluation report like the Corps did in 2013 that has all kinds of technical details. It is a overall strategic plan on how we're going to implement this thing. So next slide, please. Whoops, where to go? There, you skipped one. Yeah, well, okay. So why a strategic plan? And I just got ahead of myself and explained that, so I won't. This whole slideshow will be available on the internet, and I'll email it to you guys next week. Next slide, please. I already explained this. Okay, so the components. One thing is you want to have a functional description of the project, like what are all the elements of the project and how they interrelate with each other. You want to have a real good description of the cost of the project. And what's interesting is we do Rock McCarran and we start to initiate these other designs, we'll get a lot better information on costs. Because before, there's been all kinds of cost estimates out there. I've done a lot of designs where I've done engineering estimates, so I do have experience, but it's much better to lay it all out and have an engineering firm go, yeah, this is what I think the cost is, versus me kind of doing a unit analysis and guessing, so to speak. So the third thing is the effects of the project, positive and negative, and how they are mitigated if negative. So it needs a section on that. It needs a timeline and sequencing of the project along with the financing and the logistical concerns. Like, for instance, we always talk about with Vista, I'm just going to ask, what is the critical path of Vista Narrows? Let's see if you guys know. I'm just going to see if you... Exactly. The permit is critical path. We have now the financing. Yeah, Alexis is,
Studied last night.
yeah, we'll have to give her one of those awards, but no.
Board for 4 years, I better know that.
So, yeah, that's right. It's, you have to know that. And so, and it's really important to know those logistical issues. What is really holding things up, or what is really, what is the real key point? And what I want to say about that too is that's where we're pressing the hardest. I've already had a talk with the actual coordinator of the entire 408 program for the Corps nationally. Then I've followed up and we've had some back and forth correspondence, and we're going to have a meeting. Danielle and I are going to have a meeting with them early in January, very 1st of January. So we're trying to push this forward and get this to completion, but with the letters from the tribe, with the new modeling, and with the deauthorization, it makes it a much cleaner path to get to permitting. And it's already been several years, so they're already kind of like going, okay, we got to get this done. This looks bad, because they always want to get things done in a certain period of time. So that's the critical path. Next slide, please. So, as you know, we have elements for the project. You've seen this graph, probably your slide too many times, but this just kind of shows their geographic locations of each of the project components. There is now, since we've done the modeling, since we've started doing some of the design work at Rock McCarran, it's become evident that there are two little projects that need to also probably be added. And that is a small project up near Lake Street, because there isn't some nuisance flooding that comes off there, and it gets down to the airport. So it goes through all kinds of neighborhoods. It's not really bad flooding, but it is a nuisance flooding issue. And at the airport, it actually could do a little bit of damage. Then there's another project where we're actually causing a water level rise on the university lands. But if we put a small levee downstream of McCarran Bridge for about, 700 feet or so, or it's actually a berm, then we don't have that water level rise. So those two things are probably going to have to be added. They're not big, but they are probably something that needs to be added. And like I said, as we get better modeling, better information, better terrain, we're going to see things that we didn't see before. And so those are two of those. Next slide, please. Okay. Yes. So
I'm sorry, George, where on Lake Street?
right at the river on the south bank, it appears water's coming into Lake Street. Then it flows through that neighborhood there. Then it goes all the way down, crosses over at Vassar and gets into the airport area. So it really, for such a little break, it really causes a mess. So it probably wouldn't take much to fix that, like a rolling hump or a low berm or something like that. But I don't have a design for that yet.
And it's not on that map. So we just
No, it's not, and neither is the thing with the university. That's not on the map either. So this thing, I know you can't read it. There is a copy of this slide in the slideshow being put up. But what I want to say about this slide is this is really important because it can give somebody that's overseeing somebody like me an idea of where things really are at. So if you go through there, you see the green. When something's in green, there's a footnote down there. That means we have the funding to do this right now. So we, like with our home elevation work, we've been doing this for a while. It's 6 years before and 6 years after, from 2018 to 2030. We've been doing this for a while now, and we do have funding for it. We likely will only do 1 or 2 more homes at the most, because it's just, there's not a lot of interest in it. But then you look at all the things in green. Those are things we can do with existing funding. With yellow, it becomes things that we probably will have to, we might be able to get there with our income stream by the time it comes up. And then the things that are in orange are things that we will have to do some sort of financing or a grant or something. And along those lines, one of the holes I saw as I was doing the plan is I really need to lay out our financing. I looked at this, I had a meeting with the head of a loan program that was just shifted to the Corps from EPA for levies. And they are literally loaning out over billions of dollars to different entities, about 200 million at a time. The minimum is 20 million. And it's for things just like what this is. And so we were talking, and he was really excited to hear that I was being deauthorized in a few weeks. At that time, it was at the end of October. And so about a 20-minute to 30-minute talk, but the bottom line is over bonding, like on $100 million, this, according to what the averages are and everything, you save about $25 million with this program. So it's significantly different than bonding. And so we're working on that. And as we get more information, we'll have a dedicated financing section that talks about both that loan program and grants. And one of the other cool things about that loan program, and I do have a presentation in the announcements about when I talked to him after the presentation, but one of the really cool things about that loan program is it is like, how many of you guys actually have a home equity loan on your house? Anybody ever do that? Yeah. Well, a home equity loan is like you can borrow the money and you don't pay interest on that money until you draw it. And this is the same way as a home equity loan that way. You do not pay interest on that loan until you borrow it. And there's a period of when you're just drawing on the money and you're just paying interest. And then they have a period where you pay it back. So it has up to a 30-year payback period. And you could have up to a 5 to 10-year draw period. And so that allows you to build the project and then put it into your budget for payback.
So, I'm sorry, who is the loan through?
It would be the Army Corps of Engineers. It's called the SIFA program, and it's only for people that are deauthorized at this point. The Office of Management and Budget said, look, you have to be deauthorized to use this. They don't want you pulling from two sources from the Corps. So anyways, that there is a presentation on that in your clippings section, so you can see that.
We can do that because of our dedicated tax, because we have.
Yeah, we have a
revenue.
dedicated tax, and he asked a lot of questions about that.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's the key, is we have a dedicated tax that is like our like in a home equity loan. Your house is what you put up against for the loan.
It's the asset.
It's the asset. The tax thing is our asset.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so next slide, please. So each of these projects, I'm kind of doing them in the order that we're probably going to tackle them, that I think we are, or pretty much sure we are. And the first one is Vista Narrows. So we have been in active permitting or planning or design since 2018 on this. So it's been 6 years of this. Most of it's been waiting on permitting. But yet we're at about 60 to 65% design. So all we have to do is go to final design once we have the permit. And then the construction I've got down for 26 or 27, or, it could be both. Then we have the downstream mitigation is going on. We already put the 17 million in escrow, so we're already started on that now. So you can see where these are just rough, they're in years, but it gives you an idea of where these projects are going. One of the things I want to say is in the past, I seem to have been putting off when we construct. Now that we have a cleaner bead on that permit, and we may have a decent financing program where I can bring the financing in faster, I am trying to do this faster. And the reason I'm trying to do this faster is a flood could happen any year. Our sense of urgency, even mine, I had to like look into my dark soul, so to speak, and go, look, the flood could happen next year. You need to get off your, never mind. You need to get on with this and get this start built. So we are starting to accelerate into this, not decelerate. And in the past, I was putting things off because I didn't know what was going on with the tribe. You know, I was trying to get there, didn't have it yet. Now we're starting to get more certainty. I'm trying to compress the time scale back in. So next slide, please. So the next thing, it's moved up now, is Rock McCarran. And that is part of this. When you have more information, you have the modeling, you find out that if you cut off all those breakouts up by the airport and up by GSR, et cetera, it's going to make a gigantic mess if you have all that extra water in the river and you don't have protection down there. So it needs to be done either concurrently or before. Or very on, maybe just right on the tails or something like that. So the idea is this is moving up. I have it starting as early as 2026. The 60% design should be done at the end of 2025. We will be working, we're hoping to get a community grant for around $3.5 to $4 million. When we get that, we'll be working on property acquisition. And so when we have that all in place, maybe as early as late 2026, we could do it. It'll probably be more like 27, but that helps us because now we're not behind these other projects like GSR, Tumwa, and the airport. Next slide, please. So the GSR berm with the Tumwa levee. The GSR is an interesting subject, and we are whatever to talk about them, right?
Yes.
Okay, in general terms. And we are working very closely with the GSR, but their plans are shifting and changing themselves. And so we are trying to work with them, with their plans, however they're going to do it. And it probably won't look like what's up on that picture right now. But whatever it is, it's going to provide flood protection up to a 117-year event with 3 feet of freeboard, just like the rest of the project. It is beyond a 100-year event because, frankly, a 100-year event in 10 years may not be a 100-year event anymore. It might be a 50-year event, and we need a higher level of protection than what we have. So I don't want to build a 100-year, thing, and then suddenly it's not a 100-year thing. So anyways, we're going a little bit bigger, and even the Walmart area there with the Colonies levee is designed 117 plus 3 feet. So that was good on them. So we're going to match that level of protection. So this one, if you look at it, we're trying to get everything done by 2027 now. So, we've already been talking to GSR multiple times. I've talked to Tumwa. We've been out there once with them, and I've been out there with consultants about 4 times. So we're ready to put that into design. Probably our next meeting, I might even ask you to put this into design. So those, as we build those out, those will have the protection there for GSR and a major protection to the airport. Next slide, please. So airport berm and terracing, this one, as you can see, we have been working on, one of them got cut off there, I'm sorry there. I don't got the construction on there, but once again, the construction would be 26, 27. And we've had 2 meetings with the airport, and we're moving, and these are in the last 6 to 8 months. So this isn't like over years. So we're meeting with them. They want to meet with us more, and we are working forward on a design with them, and we're integrating them into the design team that they would help choose this contractor. They would look at all the different, interim reports and make sure they're okay with it. So we're integrating them into it like we did with the tribe, like we've done with other entities. We're doing that with GSR. We're doing that with Tumwa. Same thing. So anyways, once again, we're looking at construction done by 27 on that. I'm sorry, I left that line out there. Next slide, please. So this one is the North Bank levee, and this one is being moved up considerably. And I'd like to move it up more if I can. So right now, I've got this in, and I should have put a blank in there for 2025. I would like to get into design and permitting start our design this coming year. And what I'd like to do there is do an alternative study to figure out how to place that and keep it as levee the whole way. I've heard a lot from Sparks, both electeds and staff, hey, I want that to be a levee, not a flood wall. And so we're going to work on trying to keep that, different alternatives to get it there, and really study that out. Also, we want to look at, should we break this thing up? Should we break it into, 3 pieces, not just one piece, and do it sooner? Like the really bad spot where the really bad breakout is. Do those sooner, or do that spot sooner to protect the area more sooner. So we'll be looking at that, and that's something we'll probably be bringing to you next year. I'm estimating we're going to bring all designs to you next year at some point. So that next slide. Okay, so these are other things that we're doing that are related, or they're new things, that kind of thing. Home elevation is still going on. That will probably set to end at the end of 2026. We do have we have 2 active FEMA grants going right now. We're just not getting a lot of interest. There is one homeowner that we're working with off and on, so we'll see how that goes over the next 6 months or so. But anyways, we are working on it, but it seems like there just isn't a lot of interest in the program. And it is only limited to people that were signed up for those specific FEMA grants. So it's a universe of about 15 to 20 homes. So it's not like everybody can just apply. They had to apply back in 2000, from a period of 2010 to 2020. Then they needed to be included on the FEMA loans. If they're not on the FEMA grants, if they're not on a FEMA grant, they have to pay taxes on it, which are, it could be like $70,000 tax bill. So that it's really not feasible without a FEMA grant for homeowners. So next thing is the cost of this has gone up. Not surprising, I suppose. It's, you can look at all the different areas, but, I've got Rockton McCarran up to 59 million. Some of my consultant scared me to make it higher than it used to be. But the levee and flood wall at McCarran, I've put some more inflation and contingency on it, so it's up to the 52.8. Vista Narrows, more inflation on it, 51.5. And that's, some of those costs have already been realized, so it's not like this isn't a true cost forward. Like I said, I need to do a very careful analysis, to do a very careful financial section. But as of right now, this is our cost forward. And it's about 20 million higher. Next slide, please. It's about 20 million higher than this analysis I did last December. So you see there, I'm at minus 53 million. Now I'm at minus 73 million. That is something we can finance with that loan program if the interest rate is not crazy. If it's around 4.5 to 5, we can do it. If it's 7 or 8%, no. And right now it is in that 4.5 to 5. And it historically, in the when it was run by EPA, it was even lower. So anyways, we have the ability right now to finance this thing and get it done in a very short amount of time, instead of having to string it out to, get the funding each year type thing. So next slide, please. So the takeaways that I got out of doing this exercise is I need to update information on the cost and benefit, because I was just talking to Mayor Lawson, and we were talking about how I need to sell the problem. This is a $2.5 billion economic juggernaut staring us in the face that will crush us, not completely, but will really hurt us badly. On the order of COVID, I'm not saying as bad as COVID, but it's on the same order of magnitude if it happens. Like in 97 flood, if it happened today, it would really hurt us on tax base. It would hurt us on damages, people losing their jobs. And these people that lose their jobs that work in the industrial areas, they live all over the Truckee Meadows. A lot of them live in the North Valley. So people say in the North Valley say, well, what does this have to do with me? Well, guess what? A lot of your people work in those areas and they'll be unemployed thanks to the flood. So I need to sell this. And I'm going to show a video here in a minute that we're working on that helps do that, as well as other things. And that's something you guys have been criticizing me about, by the way. And it's a valid criticism because I need to sell it. No, it's a constructive criticism. I take it as that, and that's okay. As soon as we get a definitive word, we need to do better detailing and scheduling on the permit. We need to work on designs as soon as possible. I think I've already brought that up for various reasons, because it takes a while to get, all the process of getting a permit. It takes time. They like to say it's a year or two. I don't know if that, that's being optimistic. I'm hoping we can get faster permits because of Vista, because it creates momentum. But from recent results of modeling, the Lake Street and the UNR farm I've already talked about, and with better information on costs and possible loan programs, I really need to beef up that costs and financing section. So the plan, this exercise was good, but this plan is certainly a draft right now. It needs a lot more work, and I plan to resubmit this with the CIP in March, the plan with it, because it is the bulk of the capital improvements project. It's not all of it, but it's, 95% of it. So I would do that at that time. Next slide, please. So this is the end goal. The end goal is everything in red gets taken out of flooding, and the areas in blue, especially upstream of McCarran there, get a better river with a more restored river, especially in that Rock to McCarran reach, with a park and everything else. That's the goal. That's the goal, is to get all that area, all that industrial area in Reno and Sparks and the airport and GSR out of harm's way. So that's what the goal is. And I need to focus more on the goal. And this strategic plan exercise really helped me with that. And I think the next thing's just questions. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have we talked to our lobbyist about the new administration and realistically looking at what funding will look like, especially on the granting side? I don't think that those will exist. And I just having a discussion, about what that federal picture looks like for us. I just feel like this loan program looks like robust. It doesn't necessarily look like it will go away. I just have some, concern about just looking into the future about funding for us.
Yeah, I think it will be more challenging for grants, but I think it might even be more liberal on the loan programs. And we have talked to him about it. And he even gave us a sheet on, kind of thumbs up, thumbs down on different aspects of what we do based on if there was a sweep versus, this was actually before the election, if there was a sweep versus was there a divided government versus was there a Democratic sweep or Democratic divided government, it had all scenarios. So we have talked about this already, and we continue to talk about it. And, we're going to be looking early and fast on the grants because some of this is leftover funding from
Infrastructure?
the infrastructure bill, yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, I don't know what you had in your coffee this morning, but you are definitely pretty excited about everything. And so thanks for creating the opportunity to have a strategic look and a deep dive. So kudos to you for accelerating, or at least that's the goal of accelerating everything. But I do have a question.
Yes.
Given the fact that the possibility looks very, very promising of the deauthorization, and the fact that you are, stated several times that you're looking at moving into more of a grant-focused basis with that, and then the loan that you've been speaking about, you have a small but mighty staff. And I'm wondering, as you're looking at the financials, especially with the possibility of accelerating the finance, the loan, and then the grant component, if there is a projection from your perspective of looking at either additional staff or how that's going to get managed.
That's a great question. That's something I talked to that guy about, the director of the program, a few weeks ago. And oftentimes, entities about our size, or even bigger than us, there are consulting firms that actually specialize in the EPA WIFIA program, but the CIFIA is very similar. So there are consulting firms that actually help with the finances, help you detail all the neat things you need to do with the finances. So that is a possibility. And I think, we're gonna evaluate our CFO here in a little while, but we underestimate her because she was once a CFO of state agencies that had heavy grant funding, such as the Division of Forestry and the Department of Agriculture. So those guys live heavily on grants. And so she has a lot of experience, and I think between her and I, we'll figure out when we have to go consultant or when we might have to go internal hire, and we'll have to make that decision because it is a transitory thing, the buildup for it, and then maybe we don't need as much help. We just need to see how this will work out before we can, but it's something we've already talked about, or I have with that director, and what the needs are and all the things you have to do.
Well, thanks. I knew that you were thinking about it. I just wanted to bring it up because obviously if there's a budgetary component, it might be helpful to look at that.
And I want to just say, the reason I'm so excited is, wait till you see what's going on Rock and McCarran. I mean, it is awesome stuff. And if I'm an old-time hydraulic engineer, I got interested in it because I fly fish. And to see that kind of work and to see that kind of detailing and the fact that that might actually happen, or there's a good chance it will happen, is extremely exciting, as well as moving ahead with Vista and Arrows. I have always just wanted to build this project, and I've been excited ever since the tribe signed that letter saying they're non-opposition. It is exhilarating. I mean, I wanted that. That's something it took me years to do and I had help. Thank you, Commissioner Hill, for all your help, and Councilman Abbott. We had, and Mike Wools on that, but that is a big deal, and it really changes my outlook because I actually think this thing can be built now. So that just changes everything, really. So does deauthorization, by the way.
Thanks. I know, if I can just have a quick
Absolutely.
follow. I know that you mentioned that you're going to talk about, the conversation you shared with Mayor Lawson and you, and in terms of the encouragement of spreading the information to the community to understand not only the need for accelerating this and the component and the economic forecast of something. I was here in 97, so we all have stories of 97. So I just am encouraged also to see what that will look like, because I think it's really needed so that people, and I think we as advocates really need to share that as well. So whatever we can do, but I'm encouraged to hear all the enthusiasm of what that might look like in communicating that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else? Perfect. No public comments. Good Good to know. Then I know there's no recommendations, so I think it's just information only. We're just moving on. Correct. Perfect. Item 5, presentation and update on the status of the Rock to McCarran design agreement and preliminary elements of the design plan, possible action to give direction to staff. Mr. Robeson, and then Shane Dyer from Chubb Engineering. Hello.
Yeah, I just want to introduce Shane. He's the, what are you, like the chief engineer of Poobah or something? I'm sorry, I just am a casual. But
great.
no, he's a really proficient hydraulic engineer, and I'm really pleased to have him as running this project with all these different consultants. And he's going to present on the first phase of this, which was an alternatives analysis. An alternatives analysis, just to say this before he starts to get into it, is a necessary component for permitting, because you have to have that for NEPA type documents. So that is why we're doing this. Plus, we want to understand what the optimums are so we can build a project that for the best cost possible, for the best outcomes possible. So with that, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, thank you, George. This is so fun to be here and to watch the progress. And you guys are doing such a great job, and to see the I've been working with the flood project for, over 10 years. We're getting there. We're getting so close. And I do feel that excitement that you just saw with George. It's really fun to be a part of. So, like George said, I'm just going to update you on the 60% design project that we're doing right now for the Rock to McCarran. And on the cover there, that's the existing floodway, or that's the existing river right there from Rock to McCarran. So if you want to start in there. So the purpose of this study, it's a multi-beneficial flood control project. Really has a lot of potential, a lot of benefits. And starting with flood management, obviously, but then environmentally, biologically, and for the recreation of the project. I've heard George call it, the potential jewel of the river on multiple occasions, and I really believe that this has that kind of potential. It's such a cool project. So project overview, essentially we started with data gathering, and then we're now into the alternatives analysis. We're almost done. And then we'll go, once we have a preferred alternative, we'll have stakeholder and public outreach, and then we'll incorporate the input, and then we'll go to the 30 and 60% design on the selected alternative that TRIFMA selects. Go ahead. All right, so the methodology on this, for all the alternatives we studied a lot, and the only ones that we've put forward here, all of them contain the 117-year flood. And that is the flood that comes through the Colonies project right above the Rock McCarran project. So all alternatives do that. Common elements in all of the alternatives you're going to see today, they all have external levees. They all have biological improvements and riparian zone expansion, and they all have a recreation area. The way we optimize this, we essentially optimized first for flooding, hydraulics, and geomorphology. And once we got the flooding under control, then we'd go in and optimize for biology and ecology, and then recreation. Okay, so alternative considerations. We had a ton of things we had to look at. There's so many things up there. And really, I'm not gonna read the list, but the hydraulic considerations, the geomorphology was a big deal, the geotechnical, the ecology and biology, the permitting and land ownership, and the recreation. And all these subcategories here, these are how we're ranking each of these alternatives. And so we're looking at each one of these things for each of the alternatives as we go through, and we're actually ranking these for the alternatives, and what we're putting forward this month is we'll have a ranking matrix that's kind of like, okay, here's what we found, George. How do you want to weight this, and what do you think? And we're going to work with TRIFMA on the selection of the preferred alternative. Okay, so here's the proposed alternatives. Essentially, there's a no action alternative, and that's required under NEPA. And then we've got the no river alignment change with terracing. So that is really no change to the river alignment, but terracing. And then 2 river realignments. And then D is a baseline grading realignment, and that was kind of the proof of concept that TRIFMA had done
that really we're kind of using as, it proved that we could do it, first of all, that George had done prior to us coming in. And so that's also one of the alternatives that we moved forward to kind of compare. Go ahead. All right, so here is the no river change alternative. Essentially, this maintains the existing river alignment. There's significant encroachment onto the private property on the north end of it. The terracing is generally above the ordinary high water mark. And this alternative is going to be faster to permit and this is going to require significant right-of-way or land acquisition, and it is not a full restoration of natural processes. So if you go over to like the image on the top, I like how you're zooming in, thank you. So you can see the levee. I don't have a pointer. Anybody have a laser pointer? Well, anyway, you can see that levee along the top on the north end of the river. Yeah, that in this alternative is pretty much across private property the whole way. And that's a downfall. That's a negative on this alternative. You can see all the terracing. Essentially, we go down on this alternative, we're going down to the ordinary high water mark, but not below. And we're grading above where Army Corps would have jurisdiction, so that when it floods, there's going to be riparian area added and things, but it also makes it easier to permit on this alternative. And then the top and the bottom are essentially with a levee and without a levee. So if you go to the next slide, I'll kind of talk about the with levee and the without levee. So every alternative, we did one with an intermediate levee. So on the bottom, you see that intermediate levee with kind of a storage area, and on the top, it's just not there. And we looked at all the alternatives with and without this intermediate levee. And essentially, if you have an intermediate levee, it costs more. You're making an alternative or an intermediate levee, but it also adds protection for the flat fields behind that levee, and it actually reduces the overall peak. So if you have the storage area and the water flows into it with the levee, we take water off the peak. So you pay more, but you get more benefit in protecting the fields and taking water off the peak. There's a cost-benefit ratio that we have to work with there, and that we're going to work with TRIFMA on does the intermediate levee make sense or not? And this.
I don't know what
Work with us.
TRIFMA is.
I mean,
Oh,
I thought it was TRIFMA.
TRIFMA
is it with us or with Army?
with you.
It's TRFMA, yeah.
What have I been saying?
TRFMA.
TRFMA.
Whatever.
I have been saying it wrong. I apologize.
All good.
The mayor's always willing to correct
You could
someone.
just say flood.
Yeah, the flood agency.
Yeah,
The flood agency.
the flood agency's
I've
perfect.
never heard it referred
I think I've been saying it wrong for about 10 years, so thank you for that. I wonder how many people I've annoyed.
Well, this is kind of an Animal House situation where you're on a roll, so you just let you go,
Yeah.
like with John
Keep
Boyle.
it going
Is that
now.
what it is?
Yeah.
I feel like it's when people say Nevada wrong, and I'm like,
How do you say Nevada?
Yeah, no. Hey, I was here in the 97 flood. This is my community. All right, next alternative. So that's the no river change. Realignment 1. So this realigns the river. You can see it utilizes the existing channel. You can see above, you've got kind of that middle channel. The northern channel utilizes the existing river as part of the sinuosity. It also has backwater channels for habitat and fish. And then we terrace on the south. And then this is the one with the levee. You can see different complexities here on the terracing that we went through. They can be applied in all sorts of different ways. We just chose a few as we looked at these alternatives. When we get into design, we'll, nail those down. The north levee on this generally does not encroach on private property. We're able to push it out of the private property, and that's a big thing for, having to purchase or do right-of-way on the north. It has improved fish habitat. We're able to keep a cottonwood gallery, a very large cottonwood gallery with established trees in this alternative. And essentially the terracing there is low flow, in all these we took into account the flows below the 5-year storms where we're trying to wet the riparian zone on a regular basis so we can actually establish riparian vegetation and have habitat and make a beautiful restored river. Okay, next slide. Okay, same thing with levee, with the intermediate levee, and without. It's the same benefits. It's the same pros and cons. If you've got the levee, it costs more, but there's a little more protection. If you don't have it, it costs less. It's the same thing as the last one. We don't have to go through it, but I did include these slides for each of them. But if there's any questions about that, let me know, with or without the levee. More protection, more cost. All right. Realignment 2. This has very similar benefits to realignment 1. It is able to utilize the river, the existing river, which reduces overall earthwork. It improves, the natural processes of the river. This one is able to preserve a major portion of the cottonwood galleries. It has better fish habitat, spawning, does not encroach on private property. All those same benefits on the other realignment, just a different geomorphology on this one as we look at how the sedimentation is happening and how the river lives and moves inside its corridor. Maybe just focus in on the top one there for a second, and just everyone can kind of get kind of an idea of how that terracing is going to work. And as the flooding comes through, it's going to go over the terracing, like on a smaller storm, a 1-year, a 2-year storm. It's going to expand, go outside the banks, and be more of that living river. Instead of being a kind of an inside single channel where it's, this will be a living river and create a riparian and a habitat zone. Everything to the south of the terracing that's all the recreation area where we've got, and it's essentially along the whole south we can use. We'll have to have, parking and amenities and the fields themselves.
So in this alternative here, this is where the fish spawning and that the fish habitat works out?
This does, yes. It restores the river in a meaningful way for fish, much.
Mostly for the Lawton cutthroat?
Well, yes, that is the target species, but it'll be good for all fish.
Okay.
It'll improve habitat for all fish.
Just from my standpoint, having a living, breathing ecosystem in an urban environment is pretty dang cool.
So cool.
So I think that alternative is my favorite by far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Early on, I've had talks with, is all right if I talk?
Absolutely.
George Robeson. Early on, I've had talks with people like Mayor Sheevy about this, and if they actually reintroduce the Lawton Cutthroat above Derby Dam, this could literally be the prime spawning zone, and it could actually be a tourist attraction because it'd be so cool.
A dinosaur fish spawning in an urban area?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and and there was even a private donor, I can't disclose who it was, but one to actually fund a bridge to connect the two trails, like the what we had, the intermediate levee trail, and then the trail of the north levee. So there were this is something that can really, I'm not saying it's like a game changer thing, but it does create a place where it's extremely rare to have that level of restoration so close to an urban center. Rare. So anyways.
Oh, I see elementary school field trips. They already go down there to see the bats under the bridge at McCarran. Mm-hmm. And I see them, a nature trail with some signs along the way, talking about the different biologies and the habitat, and then making it to the, the bridge with the bats. I can see, I'd love my own kid to do that, All right. So next slide. Again, with and without terracing, or with and without that intermediate levee. the cost savings versus more cost but more protection. And then the last alternative. So this is the baseline grading, and I kind of alluded to this, but this was the original modeling effort, and you can see it's a little different there. It was more of a broad brush, but it did provide us the baseline that we're starting to kind of compare. This provided that baseline of that, not going over 2,400 CFS at Vista Narrows to not violate the agreement. And so this was our baseline comparison. We did take it and optimize it a little bit, moved the levees off private property, optimized the weir for storage and some things like that. But this will be put forward as an alternative just for comparison's sake. And next slide. So next steps, really we're going to finalize the alternatives analysis this year. We think we'll have it done by the end of we'll have a draft to CRIFMA for sure by the end of this year. We'll go out for stakeholder and public outreach with that, and then once we have that selected alternative, we'll go into the 30 and 60% designs. So that is where we are at. You guys have any questions?
Any questions, comments? And no public comment? Got you. Then I think
Awesome.
we're good to go. I see no action, so we're moving on, I think. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you
I
bet.
appreciate it.
Great job.
IRFMA.
Yeah. Repeat after.
Say it again.
Just flood.
Just say flood, yeah.
Flood.
I want to hear the mayor say that geo word. I'm just saying. Item 6. Presentation and update on the status of preliminary designs for levees and flood walls along Riverside Drive from upstream of the Booth Street Bridge to Arlington Avenue. Kayla Doughty from the Carson Truckee Water Conservancy District and JUB engineering staff.
Good
Hello, hello.
morning, everyone. How are you? I'm
Great.
assuming this is on. It's working.
Yeah, green's on.
Okay, great. Well, let's keep the excitement and good times rolling. We're excited to give you guys an update on the Riverside Drive project. We last saw your board back in March. There's been a lot of great work that has occurred since that. So we wanted to give a quick update of what has occurred since that March board meeting and kind of give you a preview into what you might see early next year for a consent item. Last time we spent a lot of time on who Carson Truckee is and why we're here sitting in front of you. So this is just kind of a quick refresher. Carson Truckee is the local non-federal sponsor for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers flood branch. That flood branch is based in Sacramento. I realize you guys are well familiar with them. Carson Truckee, it is our job to keep the 14,000 CFS flood channel free of encroachments from the California-Nevada state line to Glendale Bridge. Obviously, TURFMA's spending a lot of time in kind of that area really right around Glendale and downstream. So this is an area upstream that we'll talk about today. It's always important to point out that Carson Truckee, while they do have some money reserved via a tax, the amount of money is very, very small. It's about $300,000 a year. And so when the Martis Creek Agreement was signed, that was understood that Carson Truckee wouldn't have a lot of money to do any projects. And so the city of Reno, Washoe County, and the city of Sparks all signed assurances back in that 1970-80 range to ensure that they would help to maintain the 14,000 CFS flood channel and do projects as needed in order to confirm that that capacity stays available on this stretch of the river. Next slide. Thank you. So we wanted to, again, kind of give a little background of how we got to this project. What you're seeing here is the area along Riverside Drive from about Booth Street all the way down to Arlington. You're seeing the JUB's been busy with modeling and alternatives analysis. So what you're seeing is a 14,000 CFS flow rate here, and all of the blue is obviously water that's getting out of the river. Carson Truckee commissioned a fairly extensive HEC-RAS model in 2018 to model the entire 14,000 flow. And we noted that at that time, it really only contained about 11,000 CFS. So it's quite a bit lower than what the original intent of the flood project was. This is definitely a concern for our regional area because it's one of the areas, at least in Carson Truckee's jurisdiction, that has the most risk in flooding times because of how urban that area is, right? Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, we are showing you kind of the 1950s era hand-drawn design that was included in the Martis Creek Agreement for this area. This is one of the few areas in Carson Truckee's jurisdiction that has what they consider a dike. So essentially that area, you know, I'm sure everybody has walked that beautiful section adjacent to the river. That 5-foot concrete walkway is actually called out there in the plans. So it's essentially a dirt berm with a nice path along it. Okay, so since we saw you guys last March, I want to point out that this is a super exciting project for me. I've been with Carson Truckee since about 2020, but my predecessor, Lori Williams, who was the general manager of TUMWA prior, she has been fighting this fight since about 2012. So we're on 12-ish years of trying to get this project done. And I think that with the leadership at the City of Reno and TURFMA right now, we're finally there. So it's very, very exciting. We've been collaborating, I think, very well. JUB has been super incremental in getting an alternatives analysis done, just like you heard from Shane on the prior presentation. These are very important, right? It's important for permitting. It's more important, I think, for public outreach so that the public can see that it wasn't just one decision that was made to push a design forward. So they looked at 3 different scenarios. The first one is what we call, I think, Alternative A. That's just containing the 14,000 CFS. I know that you guys have experience of a design option for the full 100-year flow there on Riverside that included an astronomically large berm that the public absolutely lost their minds about, but we thought we'd give it a relook anyway, just for fun. And then we did what is considered kind of an intermediate flow event. We weren't targeting any specific flow for our Alternative B. Instead, we were taking an existing wall that's down in the Arlington area and just extending it. So that's about a 2.5-foot tall wall. But we wanted to see kind of what that would do and also whether that's one that we should be considering for that stretch of design. We've talked a lot about roles and responsibilities over the last 8 months with the project team. Right now, what we're proposing to your board is for Carson Truckee to fund and manage all of the final design as well as the 408 permitting. Obviously, our role is to be the non-federal sponsor to the Army Corps. I wish that meant that we would get a fast track with them. It doesn't, but we know them and we know how they work, and so that's why we'd like to take that kind of project proponent role with the 408 permitting that's going to be required. The City of Reno would be funding and managing some of the other pedestrian path improvements that they might like to see. You saw that walkway called out in the original design. They would also be managing all of the public outreach process, the bid and construction issuance and construction document management, and then overall project construction. And then we're looking to TURFMA to fund, obviously be very involved in the design review, that's important, but also fund the construction. One of the things I think is exciting about this project is we're talking about splitting it into 2 phases. So we would have one phase, actually the majority of the project, that can be done under maintenance under the Martis Creek Agreement. We don't need a 408 permit for it because we're just regrading some sections of the berm that was already called out in the federal project. Because of that, we're looking at the possibility of getting that done in this upcoming summer season. So this is one that you can fund and you see immediate return on investment and get to kind of do one of those bright and shiny videos, George, that's look what we did. And then we would look at doing the smaller portion, which is going to, Jeff will get into this, but which would be a fairly substantial wall for about 400 feet upstream of Booth Street. That's the piece that's going to need 408 permitting. And as you guys know, that's 12 to 24 months to get through Army Corps. So that's why we're looking at splitting them. I'm going to let the actual design expert talk about the design pieces.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Weigel. I'm at JUB Engineers. Thanks for having me today. So next slide, please. So here we can talk a little bit more about the source of the flooding. In the photo on the upper left, we see just upstream of Booth Street on the Truckee River. Thank you. So here we can see this is the earliest time increment in the model that we're using, and we can see that flooding begins to escape the river channel at that location. To the right, we see that flooding then continues down Riverside Drive, and that, I guess the point is that's the source of most of the flooding in that area during the 14,000 CFS flood. On the bottom right, we indicate here with those red arrows that indeed there is some flooding that does occur according to our models that is sourced directly from the berm overtopping and not the flood wall. So the flood wall is the majority. There is some minor flooding that occurs along the berm. Next, please. So here's an overview of the extents of the preliminarily designed flood wall. So it's the same general location. You can see Booth Street Bridge on the right. And as Kayla mentioned, it's about 400 linear feet of flood wall with an estimated maximum height of about 7 feet from the top of footing to the top of wall. Just downstream, in the next slide, we can see the approximate extents of the berm portion. So this is about 1,700 feet long, and it is coincident with the existing path. Next, please. So we've begun the 30% design process directly with CTWCD. And the intent, the primary design objective here is to contain the 14,000 CFS flow rate. Well, in order to be within the bounds of the maintenance agreement, we intend to replace only with like-kind features. And the real design constraint is avoiding and reducing and mitigating impacts to trees. Since that is such a beautiful amenity there, that makes grading and construction improvements challenging there. So, kind of reiterating what Kayla said, we intend to split this into two phases, the flood wall portion and the berm portion. If you zoom out, please, and pan to section C1, you can see this is a very preliminary section that we've cut that shows sort of the challenge of centering centering new improvements on the existing path and sort of dodging trees. So we've spoken with City of Reno staff, the arborist and urban forester, to determine, determine what their expertise is, their recent experience on projects like this, so that we can work together as the design progresses.
Is this existing, what you're showing us?
Sorry, yeah, the dashed line is an approximation of the existing terrain that we've surveyed. And then the bold line is a very rough placement of an alignment of new grading. Yeah. So this is intended to show a very constrained section of the path.
And you take out that tree?
Potentially. At this stage, yes, the assumptions in this design iteration would require removal of that tree, most likely. Yeah. So if you zoom back out, you can see a plan view. The red line indicates the preliminary grading limits. The green is the existing path, and the black is the proposed path. So the major design parameters that we can vary are the path width. We'd like to bring that up to City of Reno standards and be a 10-foot wide path potentially, but our initial design iterations have shown that that may not be feasible. Similarly, we'd like to have 1 foot of freeboard as a minimum on the existing berm. That is achievable without additional elevation in some locations, but as we saw in the initial figures showing the flood sources, we're below that 14,000 containment level. So there will have to be some increase. We may be able to get it to a 0-foot freeboard. That is exactly containment of the flow with no wiggle room on top. Again, not desirable, but it's a balance of mitigating existing or maintaining existing features and mitigating risk.
Did you look at, thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
you're good.
Sorry, I
You're
keep
good.
on interrupting. Did you look at going into Riverside Drive?
Not in this,
Approaching into Riverside Drive?
not in this phase of analysis.
Okay.
That was discussed with CTWCD and TURFMA staff, and it was desired not to encroach in our design processes.
Why?
Sorry, I'm going to
Well-
jump in. I think the biggest reason why is, George, do you remember what year it was looked at for Riverside to do the full 100-year flood? And then it was that big berm that took over half the road? Do you remember? how?
Yeah, that was in 2013.
Okay.
That's about $20 million.
It's very expensive, but also it just had some really sensitive public pushback. I think that area at that time, they were looking at creating a berm that was large enough that it would take an entire lane and then making Riverside a one-way only. And it was there was such negative feedback on that we didn't want to go back to that design alternative.
It's just not used a lot, and it's heavily used by bicycles, that road, and it is a grid that all goes into that. So it's not necessary to have vehicle traffic on that road. So just as a board member, my 2 cents, living in the city of Reno, but certainly representing Washoe County, so trying to be sensitive to my city of Reno counterparts, I'm not saying I want to spend $20 million, because I don't think you're even looking at something to that extent, that 100-year flood piece that George has brought up, but I'd be open to looking at that since you're at the 30%, that's my one board member's opinion.
Can I comment on that? That was option C in the alternatives analysis. We chose last time alternative A, which is the other problem with option C, which was the 100-year, was the extensive permitting that would have to be required from the Corps. 24 months would have been extremely optimistic for a project of that size.
What board meeting did we choose option A? You don't have to know right now, but just if you could. let me
Okay,
know.
well, honestly,
remember.
that is a group choice between 3 entities. I don't know how that all worked out.
I don't think this board voted on that. So anyway, my thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Continue on.
So moving to the next slide. So here we have some photos of the existing site, and I wanted to point out what we're referring to as the drip line in the photo on the left side. You can see that the canopy extends from one side to the other. Great for shade. That's often used as a proxy for sort of a critical root zone. So working in this area will be challenging, just to reiterate the constraint that we expect. This is to be used primarily as a pedestrian path, so there are other sort of grading and engineering challenges with keeping the slopes flat enough to be used without risk, without tripping hazards and that sort of thing. As for the design schedule, the berm portion of the survey is complete. We're working with Reno staff and others to complete the floodwall portion of the survey. And that's pending entry agreements, as I understand. We intend to complete the 30% design by February of 2025. Next, please. As for costs, here are what I'll call early 30% cost estimates. For the berm construction, we're looking at an estimated about $875,000. We expect permitting and additional planning, design, and construction management to bring that total to $1.1 million approximately. Here you can see the major cost items. Most of it is concrete removal and replacement, We expect that construction to be somewhat specialized, not just taking out, scarifying and recompacting. We'll have to do that more carefully with either pneumatic or hydraulic excavation to examine roots, determine which are critical, remove them selectively. As for the flood wall, here we see the costs are estimated in total as about $2 million. Major cost item are the flood wall itself and the fairly substantial riprap bank armoring that's present already. This portion of the project will disturb the existing roadway temporarily, we expect, but we expect to replace that in like kind. Next, please. Happy to take questions if you have.
Yeah, and I'd love to go back to a little bit of discussion on the alternatives analysis. I think that, we are happy to consider, so for Carson Truckee, we just want the 14,000 contained because that's our jurisdiction, right? And completely hear what you're saying as a member that lives and works in the city of Reno, right? And enjoys that area as well. I'm wondering, I think that based on, George's involvement in the alternatives analysis and kind of working with the city of Reno, we talked about that alternative C really becoming more of like maybe a transportation project, where it pulls in, RTC. Are we looking at just modifying that to a one-way only street? Are we looking at adding a larger bike lane? And so I think that's really why we shied away from that alternative, because we wanted to focus on it being a flood project and not so much a transportation project. But I'm curious if you guys would be interested in an item at the next meeting where we actually present that alternatives analysis and allow the board to vote on it.
Ms. Hill? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And Carrie has heard me talk about this, and so I know that this is not new. And I'm not trying to stop the progress. It would be great if we could get something going this next year. I'm on the RTC board, so is Mayor Lawson. I don't know if I thought RTC was at the table for these discussions. So, I just don't ever want to do something that we're only going to go out and rip out later through RTC. So that's just my one concern. And I, seeing as how careful we have to be with all of the work that we need to do, and it's very minimal, I just want to see if there's a way to find cost savings if we were working on the full project. So that's my thought.
Sure, I can answer that question. Carrie Koski, Director of Public Works, City of Reno. Yes, we have had many conversations with the RTC as well about Riverside Drive, what the future of that would look like. And what we are working on right now is on another path, we are looking at conceptual designs for Riverside Drive. Do we convert that to one way? Do we remove traffic altogether? Those discussions are happening kind of with the RTC, but nothing has been developed because there's so many moving parts right now. We've got the Keystone Bridge and other connectivity that we're working on in the downtown micromobility. I think that would be a future project. I don't see us now moving towards putting the berm out into Riverside Drive. We're talking about moving the berm up 6 inches to a foot maximum. I don't see personally how we can't kind of guide that around the existing trees that we have. That widened path will keep the pedestrians on the path. So as in that photograph, you saw how the foot traffic is wearing the path down, and it's creating part of the problem why the path is kind of being eroding away. So I think that this will contain this option here will contain the 14,000 CFS. I think it gives us everything that we need. We need to protect the berm. It won't have to be pulled out if the RTC comes back and we do identify a project for the Riverside Drive, where we're actually converting that somehow, some way. I believe that we will stay within the right-of-way, and we won't have to take the berm out. So I hope that did that answer your question, Commissioner Hill?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Can I ask one other thing? If you go to option C, the wall upstream of Booth Street, I can't remember exactly, but it's on the order of 12 feet high. And so a 12-foot wall that's one of the reasons it's so much more expensive. And just the engineering and everything that would go into a 12-foot wall, and also having a 12-foot wall right next to Booth Street Bridge and next to those apartments, and the original thing that we had, even though it was out in the street, took out 50% of the trees. So I think there's a lot of things going on there that we got to be careful with. I think whatever happens on Booth Street can happen on Booth Street, but it doesn't have to be interlinked with this flood project or affect the flood project part of it.
Perfect.
I'm gonna agree with Commissioner Hill, because the last thing we want to do is come back in 5 or 10 years and have to redo everything and then just say, oh, by the way, RTC, here you go. There's a $20 million bill. So I just, if you guys are comfortable with it,
Yep.
This is public record.
Yes.
So 10 years from now, when City of Reno comes to the RTC and says we need $40 million to fix Riverside, that ain't gonna happen.
No, it's not going to
I
happen.
won't be around for that, but
And I
what I'm saying.
hope I'm not either.
But it's important that we are thinking that way, because if
Absolutely.
we're costing ourselves money, that it
Yes.
ultimately costs all of us the same amount of money.
Yes. Understood, 100%. Yep.
Perfect.
Gotcha. Any other questions, comments? Anyone online? Gotcha. And perfect. I think this was just another presentation. So thank you both for being here. Have a good one. Oh, sounds good. I'll read slowly. Item 7, presentation of a draft flood awareness video that was produced by TURFMA pursuant to an agreement with Byron Evans Films. The final form of this video and others will made available to the public through various outlets, including the TURFMA website. In the future, possible action to give direction to staff. I read slow enough for good? Mr. Robeson. Grab your popcorn.
Another flood on the Truckee River. It might be this winter, it might be next winter, but it's going to happen. It is not if, it's when. Flood events on the Truckee River typically take place from November until early April, with the very worst time from late December through February.
When we have, say, a huge snowpack and then we're able to get a warmer, wetter storm on top of that snowpack, that is what tends to lead to our river floods.
The main types of conditions that have caused flood events are atmospheric rivers.
Atmospheric rivers are basically a concentrated stream of water vapor. They're bringing energy from the tropics, tons of moisture, equivalent to multiple Mississippi rivers of volume.
When they encounter our mountainous terrain, such as the Sierra, that water is then forced up, it begins to condense into clouds, and it unleashes a lot of rain and snow in the region. Most atmospheric they actually bring us between 30 and 50% of our total annual precipitation. It's those really strong events, though, that can bring us our problems. Those strong events can produce copious amounts of rain and snow, and also bring us our flooding conditions as well.
The Truckee River has a history of flooding. There was floods in 1950 and 1955 that did considerable damage. 1997 flood was a very historic and devastating event.
We were seeing copious amounts of rain, multiple days, so it's a long duration event with heavy rain, sometimes over a foot of rain in the mountains.
There's many iconic pictures of people being stranded on roadways, airplanes actually having water all the way up to the door.
The airport, for example, definitely suffered from water being all over the tarmac. And that's an impact for commerce, for business.
Affected not only the downtown area and did damage there, but it really, really devastated the Sparks industrial area, as well as the area around the Grand Sierra Resort and the Reno industrial area. What is interesting about the 2017 flood is while they were preparing for the flood, the people I talked to said that they were actually afraid it was going to exceed what the 1997 flood was going to do, and it was really touch and go.
Think about the snow when it's drier, it's like a sponge. It can absorb water to a certain point. When you get the snowpack wet enough through a warm rain process, and the temperature also rises to the point that the snow begins to melt, you're now getting two contributing factors towards getting runoff within the snowpack.
If it would have been 2 degrees warmer, we could have had a repeat of 1997. It seems like every few years, we are sitting on the edge of our seats here, looking at atmospheric rivers and wondering if this is going to develop into another 1997 flood. Flood amnesia is an interesting term. We have not had a really large flood since 1997. What would that be? That would be 25 years?
We have a lot of new people moving to the area who have never even lived through a major flood. So often people are not an event that happened 10 years ago.
It's very easy to forget about flooding, especially when we're in kind of a dry period, or especially when we're in drought. You know, we're often in prolonged drought here, and we can be in drought for 2 or 3 years. Just because we're in drought doesn't mean we're not prone to flooding.
Flooding. You need to have that go bag. You need to be ready to go within a 15-minute notification because it could happen to you. We're all in this community together, and I think it's important for us to be one and have a plan and be ready to go if it happens again.
People really do underestimate the power of moving water. It only takes about 6 inches of moving water to start to float a car. We have seen many events that once the floodwaters clear, that road is washed away.
If you're in or near the water, you can get injured by debris. There's going to be contaminants.
Also being around fast, cold water in the winter, if you're around and you fall in, you're in a lot of trouble. A flood is life-threatening. Floods can't be prevented. They're going to happen. And what we want to do is try to mitigate some of these damages by building projects that lower the risk and the damages that it's caused by flooding. And that is what TRFMA, Truckee River Flood Management Authority, is all about. Reducing the risk of flooding, reducing the damages from flooding by building flood project elements such as levees, flood walls, terraces, and other flood features so that the flooding isn't as bad.
Our next step is getting to Vista Narrows. That's where the river kind of takes a little turn, but that's Vista Narrows. The river just narrows down right there, and that's where flooding starts. And so it backs up from there upstream.
We're actually widening the low terracing of the river and creating more capacity so the water level does not get as high and it won't flood as much.
The Vista Narrows project, it's the grand prize for our whole region to reduce flooding in our area.
People need to know that it can and it will happen.
You want to be prepared, and the only way you can be prepared is to know where you stand. Is where you live in a floodplain? Where you work, how prone to flooding is that?
Have a to-go bag, because like that 97 flood, When we tell you to evacuate, we need you out of there in a few minutes, and there's no redos. You gotta take what you can take and get out of there.
I would recommend that people access our information by going to our website and looking at our resources. And if they have any questions, calling us up and asking us. We also have resources on how to plan and actions you can take to mitigate the flooding locally at your property. It's all a matter of information. Having information about a flood and what it can do to you puts you in a much, much better position. We want to do projects that cause the most flood protection for the least amount of money. The Truckee Meadows Flood Project is that because of the $2 billion of damage that would occur if a 1997 flood occurred and the relative low cost of the project itself. It will do good things for our region and protect us and protect our economy.
We are continuing to see weather events become more extreme. We're not just seeing it locally, we're actually seeing this take place across the nation and globally. So we're going to be seeing things hyped up. We're going to be seeing storms that become more intense.
We're gonna have that high snow year followed by rain. We'll have that happen again, but if we can have a place for our water to go and we're not putting businesses out or having water come into someone's home, it's a win-win for all of us.
So it's important to always be vigilant and remember that a flood can occur. It's probably going to occur. And when it does, we want to have a flood project that alleviates most of these damages that flooding will do. And if we don't have it, we're going to kick ourselves. And if we do have it, we're going to be very happy we did. So this, oh, thanks. Yeah. So this is a draft at this point, and it's a little bit long at this point. And we're looking at ways to cut this down and cut it up and just make it into a more effective set of videos. Along with this video, we almost have done a video. It's called A Tale of Two Rivers, and it's the river without the project and a river with the project and with the restoration projects downstream. And it's very striking, like this video is, the difference. And it shows how much it matters. It's not like, oh yeah, this is an incremental improvement. No, it's night and day improvement. So I think that it's important, like I was telling Mayor Lawson earlier this morning, to sell the problem, but also tell people what the solution looks like. And we're going to try to do a better job than we've done in the past. Honestly, we were stuck in the COVID and then we came out of that. And a lot of things have happened. A lot of really positive things have happened in the last 3 to 4 months. And so now we're ready to roll and take this project to a whole new level that we haven't seen in the last several years. So in fact, in the last 20 years. So that's a big deal, and we need to get the word out on that. So that's where we're going with this. And of course, we want to take your suggestions and look at what your input is. Since you're all good at getting elected, at least, you should know a little bit about that kind of stuff. So that's it for me. If there's any questions, let me know.
Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think it's a really great start. And I think once you've tightened it up, you should take it on the road, George. I know you're busy, or Danielle, y'all should get out to the commission, the councils, and go to some Rotary clubs and let people know what we're up to, because this is all coming up. And I think especially this partnership with the city of Reno, that's happening this year. So I think that there's some momentum that you can build, and I'm happy to get you on one of my board meeting agendas for a presentation. But I know Commissioner Andriola has to go, so I want to get to your review before she leaves.
Any other questions, comments?
Good job.
Yeah, the video turned out great, and excited to see it, some other versions, and definitely give you also a shout out, Marty, just everything that you're doing on social media and then the email blast. It's awesome, and obviously I know that we'll use those channels to get this video out, but just want to give you a shout out for that. And as
nothing to do directly with the video, but it's just good work there and good work overall in the video for everyone. So I don't see anyone else, so we'll hop over to item 8, discussion and performance evaluation of TURFMA, Executive Director George Robeson, including discussion of the terms of the employment agreement with Mr. Robeson, possible action to amend the employment agreement with George Robeson to award merit pay, change the annual salary, extend the term of the agreement, or to provide direction to staff. Mr. Walls and Ms. Hill?
Mr. Chairman, but Commissioner Drillo has to go. Before we do the presentation, can she give her input?
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. Commissioner Drillo.
Thank you. I apologize that I have to go, but I do want to share that I am obviously the newest member on this board, and I can just tell you, being here, that I've lived here for 38 years, I didn't even know some of these things. I have my own 1997 flood story that I'll skip. But the fact that your leadership, the fact that you are more critical, in my opinion, of yourself than sometimes I think others are, really speaks to your dedication and how this mission is really an almost like a more than a job is what I'm really getting at. And it's recognized and appreciated. And I think the fact that you take ideas and the encouragement of others from a different perspective and then implement that is to, again, be commended. So I can't thank you enough on behalf of just my short-term observation of the years that you and all the board members have spent on this and really protecting our community. I do really also am encouraged about having this, again, not be the best kept secret, and I've already shared that as well. So thank you for everything, really appreciate it. And thanks for really seeing some processes that now you can implement to make everything better. So it's recognized and appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. Robeson, the floor, or is Marty?
Turn the mic on. Okay, there we go. Hello, I put together the presentation for this review. So it's an abridged presentation. The slides have been updated as per a late respondent and have been distributed in the packets. So this review covers December 2nd, 23 through December 1st, 24. It was distributed 11/19 to the board, 11/20 to stakeholders and tech, and it closed on 6. The participants include the board of directors, the TURFMA tech, and external stakeholders. Categories asked about were effective leadership and planning, communication and integrity, and overall evaluations. And the options were exceeds, meets, or area for growth, or no basis for judgment. So I broke them down by categories here. You can see that Mr. Robeson exceeds in 34%, in communication and integrity, meets 60%, area for growth 6%, overall exceeds 60%, meets 33%, area for growth 7%, effective leadership and planning 47% exceeds, 45% meets, and area for growth is 8%. So roughly the same across the board, give or take. Here is the all response summary. As you can see, overall 92% meets or exceeds expectations. For the board of directors, 85% meets or exceeds expectations with a 15% area for growth. All board of directors responded to the survey, and they each answered 8 questions. You can find full details in attachment B. Of the stakeholders surveyed, 100% of them said that Mr. Robeson meets or exceeds expectations. 9 out of 16 of the stakeholders responded to the review, and again, 100% of responders said that Mr. Robeson met or exceeded expectations on every answer they felt qualified to answer. We had one no basis answer. And that's my presentation.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
A quick question.
Yep. Mr. Lawson.
This for Michael. Is this only a 1-year contract? Can we do a longer contract? We precluded from doing a longer contract?
No, you can certainly do a longer contract. The existing contract terminates in a year. I'm trying to remember when that was last approved. George, was that in 23 or 22? So certainly you're at liberty to do it for more than 1 year. Absolutely.
The contract it ends on December 2nd of next year.
So we're renewing you a year early.
You can do that if you'd like to.
Just to clarify the agenda item, it was
This is
drafted.
just an evaluation.
Just an evaluation today is what is anticipated. We drafted it broadly in case the board wanted to take some other action. We don't anticipate any other action.
Well, I think George is doing a great job, and I personally am looking at the timelines. I would extend you out to 2030 just so we can make sure the project gets finished. But,
Might be a bit much.
yeah, I know that's a long time to commit for your life, but I think you're doing a great job. So I mean, nobody's perfect. So, you know, that's why for me, I never give everyone a perfect score because there's always room for some improvement in certain areas. But I think you've done a fantastic job. Your passion shows through. I think I want to be a help for you in the publicizing of the flood project. I mean, I know I have Rotary Club. You can come to Sparks City Council. I mean, we've got a lot of places we can get this out. We should do a press release. There's a lot of things we can do to really push this over the edge so we don't get the comments that I hear on occasion. Well, the flood projects, that we haven't done anything. We haven't done anything in 10 years. And that's the word on the street, and perception is reality, obviously. So I'm glad you put the video together, and I think that's a great starting point to publicize the amount of work that has been done. And fiscally responsible to boot. I mean, when you can pay cash for 3/4 of your project, that's pretty dang good.
Thanks, Mr. Lawson. Anybody else? Ms. Hill?
I think from the last review, I think that you really improved leaps and bounds as far as commissioner communication, working on this publicity of the flood project, being open to partnerships. And so I appreciate you doing that. I really do. And so if it ends in 2027 is when we're supposed to be done with this whole thing, right?
I don't want to play all my cards on the table here, but I actually have a succession plan that I've never shared with you. And my goal is to have all designs done, have Vista under construction, and have the other projects teed up for construction. And at that point, I feel like I can hand that off to somebody and it's sustainable and it has momentum and it'll get done. But what I don't want to do is quit or retire. Actually, I can retire today if I wanted to. But I don't want to retire and leave it in a place where it's unstable. And I still don't think we're there yet in terms of ready to hand off. You know what I mean by that? So my retirement looks like this. It's not so much about age or anything. It's about having the project in that state. And I believe that state would happen in 2027. Sometime in 2027, those things should be achieved by then. And major parts of the projects will be under construction, things of that nature. So, and the financing has started to be worked out, and we should be under some sort of an agreement or contract in that. So all that worked out, it leaves the next person in a much better place where they have a really nice, cool project that's got momentum. So that's my idea. So I'm thinking that's 2027 for that.
Extend that contract out. 2027. Kidding.
No, I don't think you should, kid. I think that we should.
I think we should.
It's a good place to end, and if nothing else, it gives you an end time to get all this stuff in motion. As I know exactly what you're feeling is. I don't want to leave it just short and then have it derail, and I don't want to stay too long because I don't need to. So where's that sweet spot at?
And we could, if you don't feel comfortable through December of 27, we could do July of 27 and then do a month to month after you know, if you, you know, if you can retire today, my God, you should do it because that's awesome. But we need you for the last pieces of this. And so if you're working on succession planning, you should share that with the board too, because that's what TUMWA does. They, you know, keep us informed on how they're going to, you know, continue to ensure that the organization's afloat as we have a big retirement coming through, and obviously a bigger organization than Flood, but something to consider for a future agenda item. But I'm with the mayor. I think, you know, we need some stability here while we're heading into the next future.
Can we just give you some direction to speak with the chair, figure out what works best? But I'd love to see you stay through 27, December of 27, if is that possible? We'd bring that back, obviously, at our next meeting for a vote.
As far, you know, you could vote on an extension to December of 2027 now, and we'll just simply make that change to the agreement and have the chair sign it, and then it's a done deal. Even if we go beyond his plan a little bit, he always obviously can, you know,
Can always
leave with
retire
30,
anytime
he just has to
wants,
give
yes.
us 30 days notice.
Yeah.
So
He doesn't have to stay till 27, but
yeah, he doesn't have to
Not
stay
an
that long, but
indentured
we could
servant.
certainly do that and have one fewer agenda item in the future. If you wish to vote on that today, you are agendized for that.
Another thing to bring up, just so you're fully informed, if you extend me to 27, my contract is 30 days notice. So if you guys said, you know, George, I'm really tired of looking at your stupid face, you know, 30-day notice, that's it. It's not like some of the other contracts that I've seen in the government lately where, yeah, it's like crazy. So it's not a big risk to you to do that, but I want to let you know that that's what it is. It is 30 days notice. It's not necessarily paying me, but it's notice.
But don't we both have to agree 30 days notice?
No.
No. So the board could
I'm an
terminate with
at-will
30
employee.
days. Yeah, and you could terminate with 30 days. Okay. Well, is there any public comment?
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Martinez.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity. Dr. Robeson, thank you for being willing to, you know, spend these last couple of years and for sharing your succession plan. I think it takes, you know, a lot of commitment, and your passion, I think, really has been shining through this, not just this meeting, but I've noticed it the last couple of meetings. So I want to applaud you for that. And also want to applaud the board for what I've noticed is pushing you into maybe a little bit of an uncomfortable or growth space, and you really taking on that constructive criticism from the board and really embracing those challenges that have been put forth on you. And so I can see that you're really striving to put your best foot forward and making sure that the organization is at a great place. So I appreciate you not being so self-serving and looking forward to the success of this organization and not necessarily, you know, your own personal gains from it. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to give you another evaluation this year and your openness to the criticism and constructive criticism from us as your board this year around. So thank you for all the efforts. Thanks for pushing forward and listening to us. I know sometimes it's difficult having all the different members of different bodies coming forward and with different needs and trying to culminate that into one vision, but I think you do a great job of making sure that we are addressing the needs in terms of flood mitigation along the Truckee River for our communities. I know when I speak to folks out in the community, sometimes they do not realize how impactful a flood can be to our region, and they have this perception that living in the desert, the floods do not affect us. And so having lived through one myself, I know that's not necessarily the case, but I think these videos that you're putting together will definitely help highlight the need and the strength that we can bring to our communities. Thank you again for your leadership and for being willing to take on the role.
Thank you, Miguel. That means a lot, actually. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks, Councilman Martinez. I'll just say real quick too, Mr. Robeson, it's been great to, I think Miguel said it best, of some of the constructive criticism of things that you've done, like the updates. Like that's been nice to get to just review all the good things that you're doing and the whole department and everyone's doing. And then also the strategic goal today was really kind of enlightening to see. You know, we know right there, if we get a question of what are projects going on, we can go look at it. So just just thank you for doing that. And I think we might have a motion from Ms. Hill.
I move to extend the manager's contract until December of 2027.
We have a motion by Ms. Hill.
Can I make an amendment to that, Ms. Hill?
You second it, yes?
I'll second with an amendment that we also bring the contract, put in the proper cost of living and all that in the contract for the coming years. But to add one more caveat, that if he stays till December of 27, that he gets a bonus
Okay,
of
that's a friendly amendment.
$30,000.
Thank you very much. I will accept that amendment.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Assuming no public comment. Perfect. Mr. Martinez, anything from you?
No, I'm ready to vote yes.
Sounds good. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Sounds good. We'll go to item 9. Report on and discussion of the performance evaluation of CHRFMA General Counsel Michael Walls as performed by CHRFMA Executive Director George Robeson, including discussion of the terms of the employment agreement with Mr. Walls, possible action to amend the employment agreement with Michael Walls to award merit pay, change the annual salary, extend the term of the agreement, or to provide direction to staff. Mr. Robeson.
Thank you. So a couple of years ago in 2022, the board decided that there really isn't quite enough interaction for them to do a review like was just done of me, where you're asking all of these different people, but it's better for me to make that review. So I for the last couple of years, I've been doing the review, and so I follow the standard Washoe County form, and I went through that form, and just to say that overall, I found that he exceeded expectations, and throughout the different categories, he met expectations or exceeded. I didn't go, wow, you have an area for growth here, or you're not meeting expectations here or there. I didn't have any of those. So some of the key comments that I did make is Mike continues to work proactively, and that's a big deal, proactively, not just being reactionary, but being proactive on issues to help us get ahead on projects. An example of this was working through our new contract bid documents for the Wadsworth Bridge and working through the hoops of having active construction contract from a legal standpoint. If you understand, the criticism that we haven't been doing much is valid. The Wadsworth project is a fairly good-sized construction project that we have not done since the Colonies project in 2009. So these are new times for us, and Mike is, as an older employee that's been around a long time, the old dog is learning some new tricks. So I won't do, you can read the rest of it, but that is the key thing there. Another comment was, even though Mike has been here a long time, he continues to prove his knowledge base through reading, creating opinions, and legal training. So I'm big on all my staff. If you talk to my staff, I'm always going, hey, if you want to go somewhere to get some training, go somewhere. If you want to do a webinar, do the webinar. I will always say that to all my staff, and it's really good. Mike has taken that and mostly does it through his legal inroads, but he does keep up on his training, and that's a big deal too. And he has a lot of institutional memory that I lean on, as well as Danielle. I lean on her institutional memory. So it's a big deal for him to be here because he does have institutional memory, and he goes, oh yeah, when that happened, this happened, then that happened. So we learn from that to go, oh, we don't want to go that way because of the side effects that are not even, we don't even see right off, but through past history, we can kind of see it coming. So for that reason, he got and exceeds expectations. As far as a salary evaluation, last year, he got a 10% raise. Then we had a fairly sizable COLA in July. So I'm not seeing a need to deal with salary. One other quick note is he is also up next year. He is at the end of his contract as well. So with that, that's about all I have for my report, and we'll be glad to take any questions.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Lawson?
So, Michael, is your intent to stick around for a while, or you have retirement plans?
2027 at least?
Yeah. Can we keep the
Yeah,
band together till
my plan is to
27?
stick around till 2027 as well. I max out in the PERS system sometime in the spring of 27, and then I have to,
So
I guess, find a new job.
I would also like to see then that we extend his contract till, so it ends with George keeping the band together, as it were. And then, of course, all the appropriate COLA and raises needed.
I'll second that.
Yep. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Don't see any, and no public comment. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 10, report and discussion of the performance evaluation of the Turfma Chief Financial Officer, Deborah Crowley, as performed by the Turfma Executive Director, George Robeson, including discussion of the terms of the employment agreement with Ms. Crowley, possible action to amend the employment agreement with Deborah Crowley to award merit pay, change the annual salary, extend the term of the agreement, or to provide direction to staff. Mr. Robeson.
Yes, so this is very similar rationale for why I'm doing the review. In the past, Deborah was a county employee, and we wouldn't even bring this review forward. But now she has shifted to a contract employee as CFO. So she's kind of in the similar position as to legal counsel Wools, the same kind of employee. So now we have to do a review of her. Likewise, I felt like, we didn't have a meeting on this, but similar, there's not enough interaction to do a broad review like that, like was done for me. But there is enough for me. I obviously interact with her almost every day of work. So I'm evaluating her as her supervisor. And I'm not actually Mike's supervisor. I'm his lead, but in this case, I am a supervisor. And what I found with Ms. Crowley is that she it's been awesome in the past that she worked as basically a senior financial analyst and took on responsibilities of a CFO. She coordinated and ran the audit. She presented the budget. She does the financials. She helps with grants. We have multiple streams of income coming in. We have to coordinate that. And it's not going to get easier with all these contracts that we're going to go into and with grants that we're going to be accepting and possibility of a loan program. So she has the bandwidth to be able to take all that on, and she should be a CFO, and we changed her to CFO. And with that, I found that she met expectations as a CFO overall. And in many categories, she exceeds expectations. In all categories, she either met or exceeded expectations. And some comments I had about her in the review, and I kind of already alluded to the first one, but here's one that I had. Deborah continues to work on a hybrid schedule, which, if you understand this, hybrid schedules are very fraught with problems where people are not working or they're not meeting their deadlines or things like that. Deborah continues to work at a high productivity level on the hybrid schedule, which shows integrity, and it also shows, the ability to do different things and still remain effective and have her system set up so she can be effective and meet all the demands. She also comes in being formerly a CFO of several state agencies, like I had said earlier, including the Division of Forestry, including the Department of Agriculture. I can add that she was also the CFO for the Attorney General of the state of Nevada. So she has a lot of background, and it's really helpful as we start to expand our universe of financing and costs and benefits and everything else that we're doing. She also is a learner, like Michael. She actually went to Orlando to go to a conference to really dig into her area of expertise, which is government accounting. And she also has put herself out to learn SAP, which is the county system, as well as get better of our internal accounting software, which is called AccuFund. So she continues to focus on upgrading the grant acquiring capabilities with us from the financial end of it. And she's also been an important part of us holding down the costs. Because one of the things is it just didn't happen by coincidence that we suddenly saved over 70 million. And even after paying out the escrow for the tribal agreement, we're back over 60 million right now. That's not a coincidence. It's because of cost-saving measures that we did, and she was a big part of that along with myself. So overall, she's been a great employee, and that's the evaluation for her, and I'll take any questions.
Ms. Hill? I'm assuming.
And when does her contract end?
2 years, in 26.
In 26, so she is here for a while. We just did hers this year,
Okay.
earlier this year, dating back to 23.
Any other questions or comments?
You want to stay till 27? You can try. Okay, so that's just so we know we're going to have a major staff change in 27, so that the next board or whoever stays on this board can plan for that succession planning that George says. I think it's important. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we're fine. I think I'd like to see if you wouldn't mind staying until 27 so we can keep the band together.
Do you want to make a motion, sir?
Make that a motion with all appropriate COLAs and cost of living adjustments.
Sounds good. Public comment. I'll looking for a second. Ms. Hill, you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. 2027 is the year.
Yep.
Item 11, public comment. Do you have any public comment? Perfect. Item 12, board member comments, request future agenda items. I don't see anyone. Once again, happy Friday the 13th in December. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. We're adjourned at 11:03. Take care. Enjoy.